The dust has officially settled on the PSVR 2 launch. Those of us who wanted one have likely picked it up and already completed Resident Evil Village, Call of the Mountain, and at least a big chunk of Gran Turismo 7. And if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking, what's the next big release for this thing then? This is a thought I've had for a little while now, not just about PSVR 2 mind you. I feel this way about VR in general right now. Even Meta seem to be keeping quiet about or skipping altogether their VR games showcase this year. So as a VR player right now, it's a bit worrying having no big landmark titles to look forward to and no confirmed release dates for the games that have been announced. As for PSVR 2 in general, my main thought recently has been, what is Sony's 6 or 12 month plan? The hardware itself is fantastic in my opinion, but content is king, and at the moment there is no real reason for a normal consumer, who isn't already invested in VR, to get excited about this new hardware. We need some big IP, some established IP, to really pull people in, and we need some release dates. For me personally, there are 10 titles on the way for PSVR 2 that do look great. However, none of these currently have release dates, and the majority of them speak to an existing VR audience. I would struggle to see any of the following games, regardless of how good they look, selling VR to the non-converted. So let's hope Sony have some surprises up their sleeve for their new head-mounted baby. These are 10 PSVR 2 games coming in 2023 that I think are worth your attention. First up we have Synapse, a super slick and stylish looking VR FPS from veteran VR developers nDreams. This new action adventure blends magic and telekinesis mechanics with good old fashioned running and gunning in a black and white world with vibrant purple and red accents for enemies and interactive objects. It looks a lot like the studio's previous effort Fract in terms of its pacing and action in this first gameplay trailer, and that's definitely not a bad thing. Fract was a solid VR shooter, and if nDreams can build upon that foundation, I'm sure Synapse will be a high quality FPS experience. My only hope is that they really lean into this art style in later levels and stages. I'd love to see some more colours burst through as the setting or location changes. I imagine this one will look particularly incredible on the PSVR 2 OLED screen. If you're like me and you grew up playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Skate, then you need to keep an eye on VR Skater. This VR game captures the freedom, speed and experimentation of real-life skateboarding and brings it to the comfort of your own home in an immensely immersive way, whilst removing the risk of falling flat on your face or breaking your legs. VR Skater has been available in early access on PC for some time now, but it's making the leap to PSVR 2 later this year, and bringing with it a ton of levels and customization options. The unique control scheme might seem a little odd at first, but once you lean into it, the feeling of stringing together a lengthy combo of tricks to form the perfect skating line is like nothing else in VR. Players use their hands to replicate the movements that you'd normally carry out with your feet to pull off moves like kickflips and heel flips. It does sound odd, but once it clicks, it genuinely feels incredible. We need more VR extreme sports. Give me VR surfing next. Now, I kind of lied at the start of the video when I said none of these 10 games had the ability to convert the non-converted to VR. I think there's actually 2 games on this list that do have that potential, and this is one of them. It's the second game on this list from nDreams. It's Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. Now, Ghostbusters and VR goes together like peanut butter and jelly. Why did I say jelly? I'm British. Peanut butter and jam. Being able to team up with friends and hunt ghosts is a dream come true, and I can't wait to see how this one plays out. In theory and on paper, it sounds amazing. The only thing I'm not quite sure of at this point is the cartoony art style. I think I would have preferred something a little bit more realistic, but if the gameplay holds up, I won't even care. This one could be huge, and as I say, does have the potential to convert some of the non-converted based on the IP of Ghostbusters. Let's hope it's good. And the second game that has the potential to convert the non-converted is the Resident Evil 4 Remake VR content. However, this hinges massively on what that content is. Now, Capcom only just recently confirmed that they had started work on creating said content. Originally, I was completely convinced this would just be a VR mode or a small section of the game that would be playable in virtual reality, but the more time goes on, the more I think that it could be a full conversion of the entire game, much like Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil 7 are. After all, at this point, the RE engine, which these games are built on, has been proven to work with VR fantastically. The talented PC VR modder Praydog even converted Resident Evil 2, 3, Village, and 7 to work in virtual reality with full motion controls on PC. So there is a chance that we might be getting this entire game in VR at some point. I still just can't wrap my head around how the knife parrying will work. Surely that won't be motion control. It's going to have to be a button press, a button prompt or something flashing on screen. I don't know. But Resident Evil 4 Remake in full VR as the full campaign has the potential to be massive and would shift some units, much like I'm sure Resident Evil Village did. This is the kind of IP we need in VR. This is the kind of support we need to push VR to the masses. Let's just hope it does end up being the entire game. Variety is the spice of life, and it also helps when trying to sell a shiny new piece of gaming hardware, so it's good to see some upcoming games for PSVR 2 that aren't just first-person shooters. Aces of Thunder is a brand new combat flight sim from the War Thunder team, and it looks perfect for VR. Flight sims in general are a genre that transfers incredibly well into virtual reality, and this looks to be no exception. I've personally enjoyed my time in the Warplane series on Quest 2, so I'm excited to see how this stacks up as a combat flight experience. With a full suite of authentically recreated planes and an online multiplayer dogfighting mode, Aces of Thunder is one to watch if you want a high altitude adrenaline rush on your PSVR 2. However, I do hope we see some more conventional and relaxing flight sim experiences come to PSVR 2 as well. There's a real gap in that market for that kind of experience, and it seems to only be filled on PC VR. Okay, I'm really excited for this one. This is Hellsweeper, a brand new high-octane VR hack and slash and shoot 'em up that refuses to hold players' hands and lets them freely experiment with a high-intensity set of movement mechanics and combat strategies. You can wall run, backflip over enemies, move at lightning speed, and mix magic with ranged and close-range weapons to dispatch some of the nastiest-looking enemies you've ever seen in a VR game. It's essentially Doom with swords, crazy magic, and slow-motion backflips, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. So many VR titles are built with newcomers in mind, games that ease their audience in with slow-paced movement and fairly easy to tackle combat scenarios. Hellsweeper seems to sit at the polar opposite end of that scale and looks to be built for VR veterans who want the fastest and most intense experience possible. I can't wait to check this one out later this year, and if you want to test your VR legs, then make sure Hellsweeper is on your wishlist. When I first saw this trailer, and I can't remember when Sony showed it, but I remember I was watching it live, I genuinely thought this might be a new Killzone game in VR, and I got so excited, and then I quickly realised when that title screen came up that I was completely and utterly wrong. However, I'm not that fussed, because Crossfire Sierra Squad looks absolutely awesome. It looks like the exact kind of VR shooter I've been waiting for. It reminds me a lot of Black back on the PS2. If you didn't play that, go and pick up a copy, dust off your PS2 and play it, because Black is absolutely fantastic and massively underrated. Now, not a huge amount is known about Crossfire Sierra Squad apart from this trailer that we've got right here, but I can confirm the campaign can be played single player or cooperatively in multiplayer, which is absolutely fantastic. I do believe if you're playing single player, you are given some AI controlled teammates. As you can see here, they're controlling them and telling them to move, or maybe that's just them playing multiplayer and acting out some scenarios, who knows. Either way, Crossfire Sierra Squad looks fantastic, the combat looks chunky, bombastic and over the top, and I can't wait to play this one. It looks like another great addition to the PSVR 2 library. The fantastic Breachers just launched for Quest, Pico and PC VR, and players all over the world are enjoying its 5v5 online Rainbow Six in VR style gameplay loop. However, PSVR 2 players were left out of this one and have had to watch from the sidelines. But they shouldn't be feeling too hard done by, because PSVR 2 has its very own answer to the Breachers gameplay experience: Firewall Ultra, a 4v4 online tactical shooter that utilises all of the PSVR 2's fancy new hardware features. Recently, gameplay previews have confirmed some very exciting little details about this upcoming competitive shooter. The thing that has me most excited is the fact that flash grenades and flashlights will utilise eye tracking in-game. So if an opponent throws a flashbang at you, you'll have an opportunity to close your eyes at the right time to negate its effects. If you fail to do this, your screen and field of view will be a blinding wall of white, leaving you vulnerable for a time. The same is applied to flashlights, which can be used to temporarily blind the enemy team. It feels like Firewall Ultra is going all out to utilise the PSVR 2's unique suite of hardware features, and for this reason alone, it could be one of the biggest and most interesting new releases for the system this year. Sci-fi and Western are two genres that rarely meet. The last time I think I remember this happening was in the absolutely abysmal Cowboys vs Aliens movie starring Daniel Craig. I think I saw it at the cinema and spent the runtime thinking about how I need to start making better life choices that don't land me in situations like this again. Hopefully that won't be the case for this brand new VR IP that is setting out to mix those two genres into another virtual reality FPS that I think has roguelite elements. The Foglands was announced shortly after the PSVR 2 launched alongside Synapse, and it caught my attention with the short gameplay snippets seen in this trailer. There are elements of Destiny in its art style and level design which really intrigue me, and the setting of Wild West meets sci-fi horrors is a unique source of gameplay mechanics that's rarely been explored. Again, this is a title we don't know a huge amount about outside of this trailer, but there are a few spoken word lines that hint at this being a roguelike adventure. One character specifically references dying again or trying over and over, which leads me to believe that this could be the case, but I'm simply reading between the lines here and could be wrong. Hopefully we'll find out more about the Foglands soon and see its release later this year. And finally we have Green Hell VR, an excellent VR port that was slightly hampered by some rough around the edges performance issues on PCVR and a slightly restrictive map design on the Quest 2. I'm hoping the PSVR 2 version of Green Hell VR is a port of the PCVR game rather than the scaled down Quest port. With its fully intact map that's mesmerising and daunting in equal measure, this could end up being the definitive version of this VR survival experience if the performance has been optimised and polished up on PSVR 2. Green Hell VR is also a very hard VR game. The first time I threw myself in, I ended up with a stomach full of parasites and got myself stuck in a never-ending loop of throwing up and passing out, due to bad planning and a general lack of understanding about how this deadly virtual world worked. With some careful planning and learning of the game's mechanics, however, this is easily one of the most rewarding VR experiences I've ever played. A deep and lengthy adventure that really challenges players to survive and gives them all the tools to do it however they choose. If the PSVR 2 version also chooses to implement some eye tracking and haptic features, then Green Hell VR will be a must-buy for anyone looking for an exciting new game to test out on their shiny new PSVR 2 headset. And that brings me to the end of this video. These are the 10 upcoming PSVR 2 games that I am most excited for. However, don't get me wrong, I am still a little concerned that we don't have any real visibility of PSVR 2's plans and Sony's plans for the next 6 to 12 months. None of these games currently have release dates, and that's the same for Quest 2 and VR in general. Where are the big games? Where are the big IPs? What are the next titles that we're most excited for? However, if you are a PSVR 2 owner and you were looking for some games to be excited for, hopefully something on this list caught your eye. But let me know down in the comments if you're feeling the same way I am. Do you feel like VR's stuck in a bit of a rut? Do you feel like we need an event to really pep things up and show that there are some big titles coming? I think we do. That's just how I feel currently, but let me know in the comments down below. Hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have, please do leave a like, leave a comment and hit subscribe, and I'll see you soon for another one. Take care, guys. See you later.